No one expected the night to spiral into chaos so fast. People came to the event thinking it would be just another glamorous, star-filled party, loud music, expensive drinks. Influencers recording every second and celebrities moving through the room like they had something to prove. But within hours, all of that glitter and noise collapsed into a moment so shocking, so unbelievable, that it sent the entire entertainment world into a tailspin. And at the center of it all were Mendeecees Tamar. And the one person who never saw it coming, Yandy. It started with whispers. Just tiny ones, at first people leaning toward each other, brows raised, hands covering mouths. Then suddenly the whispers turned into questions. What did they just see? Was that really him? Did Tamar actually do that? No one knew what exactly happened yet, but the energy changed instantly. The room felt tighter, almost like the air itself was waiting for the truth to burst open. The tension snapped when someone in the crowd yelled, "Check your phones." That was the moment everything flipped. Screens lit up across the venue. Someone still unknown sent out a short video clip to a group chat, and it spread instantly. It wasn't long, it wasn't clear, but it was enough. The video showed Mendeecees and Tamar in a dim corner of the party, standing just a little too close, talking low, laughing in a way that didn't match normal friendly energy. And at the end of the clip, Tamar placed her hand on his chest, slowly, deliberately. That one moment was all it took for people to lose their minds. The clip exploded through social media within minutes. Instagram stories, private group chats, fan pages, bloggers. Everyone had the same reaction. This can't be real. It was real, and it hit her harder than anyone else. Eyewitnesses said she froze the first time she saw the video. Her face drained, her hands started shaking, and you could almost see the moment her heart broke. She didn't scream. She didn't confront anyone. She just stared at her phone like the world had tilted under her feet. Meanwhile, inside the party, chaos had already taken over. People were no longer dancing, they were recording, gossiping, running two corners to talk in hushed voices. Trying to get closer to Mendeecees and Tamar to see what would happen next. Security tried to create space, but the damage was already done. And then the questions began flooding the internet. Is Mendeecees cheating? Why is Tamar so close to him? Where is Yandy right now? Who leaked this clip? Was alcohol involved? Is this the end of their friendship? Every influencer who was there posted their own version of events. Some dramatic, some exaggerated, some just plain wrong. But all of them agreed on one thing. Tamar and Mendeecees were giving off an energy that did not look innocent. The worst part, the clip wasn't even the full story. Multiple people claimed they saw Mendeecees pull Tamar aside earlier in the night. Others said Tamar kept looking over her shoulder, almost nervous, almost excited. Some insisted they overheard pieces of their conversation, words like private, don't tell, and later. Whether those whispers were real or fueled by alcohol and drama, one thing was certain: the moment the clip leaked, nobody cared about the truth. The only thing people cared about was the scandal. By the time the night ended, the party wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a battlefield of rumors. And Yandy, wiping tears she didn't want anyone to see, walked away knowing that her life had just changed forever. Not because of what she saw, but because she knew. There had to be more to that moment than the video showed. The tension surrounding Mendeecees. Tamar and Yandy didn't suddenly appear that night, no. It had been building quietly for months, slipping through their friendships like cracks in a foundation everyone pretended not to see. Behind all the laughs, the red carpet smiles, and the perfectly filtered Instagram posts was a history tangled with misunderstandings, private frustrations, and moments that should have been small but somehow grew into something bigger every time someone refused to talk about it. Tamar and Mendeecees had always shared a strange chemistry, one people couldn't quite label playful, familiar. A little too comfortable at times, while Yandy stayed hyper-aware of every interaction, even when she tried to act like she wasn't bothered. It wasn't jealousy, it was intuition. She had sensed something shifting long before the drunk night scandal. But every time she brought it up, Mendeecees brushed her concerns aside with the same dismissive calm that frustrated her even more. And Tamar. She always smoothed things over with big laughs, tight hugs, and that trademark confidence that made everyone question their own doubts. So when the video clip leaked, it wasn't just the moment itself that hurt. Yandy was the confirmation that all those small signs she ignored were warnings she should have taken seriously. Months earlier, there had already been strange late-night phone calls, group events where Tamar seemed overly protective of Mendeecees' mood, and private conversations between the two that ended the second someone else walked into the room. People close to them noticed it too, but kept quiet, assuming it was harmless or just celebrity behavior. But as time went on, little incidents stacked up. A backstage argument after an award show where Tamar defended Mendeecees so passionately that even security looked confused. A podcast interview where Mendeecees mentioned Tamar in a way that felt too personal. A charity event where Yandy caught Tamar staring at Mendeecees during a speech, softly, tensely, like she was thinking something she didn't want anyone to read. Still, nobody said anything. Publicly, everything looked perfect. Privately, the emotional climate around them grew heavier, especially because Yandy and Mendeecees were already struggling with their own communication issues. They had been arguing more, connecting less, and avoiding hard conversations, pretending that being busy was a valid excuse to drift apart. Alcohol only made it worse. Every party became an escape, every drink a curtain hiding emotions nobody wanted to admit. Tamar used humor to deflect her vulnerabilities. Mendeecees used charm to hide his stress, and Yandy used silence to avoid falling apart. That night, all three of them walked into the party carrying baggage. No one else could see resentments left unspoken, boundaries ignored, and emotions that had been pushed down for too long. What made the situation even more explosive was the presence of people who had already been speculating about the trio. Industry friends whispered that Mendeecees and Tamar had unresolved tension from a past disagreement. Others claimed they had a moment months earlier during a studio session when the energy between them shifted. Whether true or exaggerated, those stories traveled, mutated, eventually shaped how everyone interpreted their behavior. So when alcohol flowed freely, that night loud music, dim lights, crowded corners, and the reckless confidence that only comes with feeling untouchable every unresolved issue. Every hidden frustration, every blurred boundary rose to the surface. Tamar, already emotional from a week of drama in her personal life, leaned on the person she felt most comfortable with. And Mendeecees, tired of trying to maintain balance between loyalty, friendship, and pressure, didn't pull away fast enough. The leak wasn't just a mistake. It was the inevitable result of months of tension that nobody dared to confront. And the most painful part? Yandy had felt this coming. She had sensed it in Tamar's extra-long hugs, in Mendeecees' defensiveness, in the way both of them avoided eye contact when she walked into certain conversations. She tried to convince herself it was nothing, that the bond between them was stronger than the insecurities creeping in. But the truth was simple. The scandal didn't start with a video. It started long before, with overlooked signs, soft warnings, and an emotional storm that was always waiting for a moment like this to explode. Waiting for a moment like this to explode. Everything about that night felt like it was building toward something, even though no one realized it until it was too late. The moment Mendeecees, Tamar, and Yandy stepped into the venue, the energy shifted in ways that only make sense in hindsight. Because the room was already buzzing with music so loud it vibrated through the floors. Lights flashing in deep blues and reds that made every expression look a little more intense, a little more secretive, and the drinks were flowing faster than judgment could keep up, creating the perfect storm for emotions to spill out of control. Early in the evening, everything appeared harmless. Mendeecees greeting people with calm familiarity, Tamar floating through the crowd with her usual superstar glow, Yandy staying close to her circle, but glancing over every few minutes as though she couldn't shake an invisible weight sitting on her chest. Tamar and Mendeecees found themselves at the bar first, laughing about something trivial. But people nearby later said it felt like they were laughing just a little too hard. Like the jokes weren't that funny, but the drinks were already smoothing the edges of their emotions, pulling them closer than they should have allowed. As the night progressed, the crowd thickened. The DJ switched to slower, deeper tracks, and the lighting dimmed into a warm haze, creating pockets of privacy all around the venue where things could happen without being fully seen but definitely noticed. That's when witnesses saw the first sign of trouble. Tamar leaning in to whisper something into Mendeecees' ear, her hand brushing his arm in a way that didn't look accidental. He didn't pull away. And that was the moment, some said, where the timeline truly shifted. 30 minutes later, after more drinks and more laughter, someone captured a short clip of Tamar and Mendeecees walking toward a less crowded corner of the room. Their heads closed, their steps synchronized like two people lost in their own conversation. They stood there talking, unaware, maybe uncaring that there were eyes everywhere. People across the room noticed Yandy scanning for Mendeecees at least twice, her expression tightening every time she didn't immediately spot him, though she tried to keep her composure by smiling and chatting with friends who had no idea how uneasy she felt. Meanwhile, Tamar's behavior grew bolder. Multiple party-goers claimed she touched Mendeecees' shoulder several times, lingering just long enough to make anyone watching raise an eyebrow, while Mendeecees seemed torn between enjoying the attention and realizing he should probably step back but never quite doing it. The drinks kept pouring, the music pulsed, and the air grew heavier with unspoken tension. At one point, a group of influencers near the dance floor noticed Yandy staring across the room with a confused, almost hurt expression as she finally spotted Tamar and Mendeecees talking in that corner too close to private. She didn't cause a scene. Instead, she watched for a few seconds, then looked away quickly, trying to hide whatever she felt behind a practiced smile. But people saw it. They always do. The climax hit when Tamar, smiling in a way witnesses described as too warm for comfort, placed her hand flat against Mendeecees' chest during their conversation, a gesture that made several bystanders gasp quietly or exchange shocked looks. Someone from the crowd lifted their phone and recorded that exact moment, the moment that later exploded online. The clip traveled from one phone to another within minutes, and the atmosphere shifted instantly, as if someone had dropped a grenade of gossip into the center of the room. People who had been dancing stopped mid-step, reaching for their phones, their faces glowing with shock as the clip replayed in loop after loop. Yandy received it while she was mid-conversation. She froze, staring at her screen as the world around her blurred into noise. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She simply went silent in a way that made her friends immediately realize something was wrong. Tamar, completely unaware of the storm she had just created, continued talking to Mendeecees, who seemed increasingly tense as his phone started vibrating non-stop in his pocket. A few witnesses said he glanced at the screen and went pale. Suddenly, he stepped back from Tamar, running a hand over his face like he'd just snapped back into reality and realized how bad everything looked. Tamar frowned, confused, trying to get closer again, but Mendeecees shook his head, stepping away further as the crowd around them shifted, eyes burning with curiosity and judgment. That's when the whispers became wildfire. Yandy saw the video. He's in trouble. Tamar went too far. Somebody leaked it. Yandy tried to leave quietly, but people noticed her wiping beneath her eyes, fighting tears she didn't want anyone to witness. The entire venue felt split into two camps: those who were shocked and those who pretended to be shocked even though they had suspected something all along. By now, the clip had spread beyond the party, hitting social media like a bomb. Bloggers were posting it within minutes, fans commenting non-stop, hashtags forming in real time. The chaos inside the venue only grew worse as people approached Tamar with fake concern, asking questions they already had answers to, while others hurried to Mendeecees, pushing their phones into his face, demanding explanations. Security tried to control the situation, but the damage was beyond repair. Reputations were cracking, friendships were breaking, and the trust that once held the trio together shattered in one dramatic, drunken moment. As Yandy walked out of the building with her head down, her phone buzzing nonstop, the timeline of the night solidified into something unforgettable, a chain of moments, glances, touches, and decisions that none of them could undo, no matter how hard they tried to explain it later. And the worst part was that this wasn't even everything that happened. It was simply the part that got caught on camera. It's a visible crack in a situation that had been weakening long before the night of the scandal. But once the clip leaked, the story wasn't theirs any more. It belonged to the world. And the world wasn't going to let it go easily. The next morning hit like a storm nobody was prepared for. Because the moment the sun came up, the scandal wasn't just a late-night rumor anymore. It had turned into a full-blown digital earthquake shaking every corner of social media, with fans, bloggers, celebrities, and even people who had nothing to do with the situation jumping into the chaos as if they were personally invited. Yandy woke up to hundreds of notifications, missed calls from both friends and industry insiders, and dozens of messy group chats exploding with screenshots, links, and wild theories about what really happened between Mendeecees and Tamar that night. As she scrolled through the endless stream of posts, her stomach twisted with a mix of anger, embarrassment, and heartbreak. Because the internet had taken that 8-second clip and turned it into 1,000 different narratives, none of them sympathetic. Meanwhile, Tamar woke up confused at first, then horrified as she realized her name was trending worldwide with hashtags like Tamar crossed the line, Protection D, and Mendeecees, each filled with millions of people debating her intentions, analyzing her body language, zooming into her hand touching Mendeecees' chest, and accusing her of being disrespectful, reckless, or worse. Mendeecees wasn't spared either. He found himself under an avalanche of criticism from fans who expected better, accusing him of betraying Yandy, embarrassing his family, and creating a scandal that could have been prevented if he had just set boundaries. Earlier, instead of letting things blur in a drunken moment, blog pages posted slow-motion replays, side-by-side comparisons, before and after behavior breakdowns, and even fake insider statements from people claiming to have seen the entire interaction up close. The truth drowned in a sea of sensational commentary. Close friends attempted to defend the trio on Instagram stories, insisting it was misinterpreted. But every attempt at damage control only sparked more speculation. Yandy didn't post anything, which fans immediately took as confirmation that she was deeply hurt, while Tamar posted a vague quote about being misunderstood, which only fueled more accusations. Mendeecees tried to call both women, but neither of them wanted to talk. Yandy needed space to breathe, and Tamar didn't know how to explain something she wasn't even sure she fully remembered. By noon, YouTube commentary channels had already uploaded reaction videos with dramatic titles. TikTok creators were reenacting the leaked clip for views. And Twitter had become a battlefield where people argued endlessly about loyalty, boundaries, and whether Tamar crossed a line that should never be crossed. The pressure grew heavier when a second clip surfaced, short, blurry, and filmed from afar, but it appeared to show Mendeecees leaning in closer to Tamar than he needed to, which shifted some of the blame back toward him and reignited the firestorm. As the internet spiraled, the real-world relationships between the three began cracking even further. Friends who had been there the night before reached out to Yandy with their own versions of what they saw, each one making her heart sink a little deeper, while Tamar found herself battling guilt and defensiveness at the same time, unsure whether she should apologize, explain, or disappear for a few days until the noise died down. And Mendeecees, stuck between two women he cared about, felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he tried to figure out how something so small turned into something so destructive. But by the end of the day, one thing became painfully clear. The scandal had taken on a life of its own, and no statement, explanation, or apology was going to stop the social media war that had officially begun. The private confrontations that followed were even more intense than the public chaos. Because once the cameras were gone, once the comments stopped refreshing for a moment, and once the three of them were forced into quiet spaces with no audience to impress or defend themselves against, all the emotions that had been building for months finally erupted in ways none of them were ready for. The first confrontation happened between Mendeecees and Yandy, in a room so silent you could hear every shaky breath, with Yandy sitting stiffly on one side of the couch, staring straight ahead as if looking anywhere near him would trigger the breakdown. She was barely holding back, while Mendeecees stood across from her, pacing slowly, running his hands over his face, trying to find words that didn't make things worse but failing before he even opened his mouth. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked with exhaustion and guilt, admitting he messed up, insisting he didn't mean for anything to happen. But Yandy didn't react, not at first. She stayed still, her fingers trembling slightly, until she finally whispered, "Do you know how humiliating that was?" And the weight of her words hit him harder than any accusation he had expected. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't throwing things, she wasn't dramatic. She was hurt in a way that made him feel the full gravity of what the world had seen. Meanwhile, Tamar was in her own storm of emotions, pacing through her house, replaying the clip again and again, each time feeling her stomach twist as she realized how bad the moment looked, how undeniably inappropriate the gesture had been, especially with Yandy present at the same event. She kept asking herself why she didn't pull back sooner, why she let the alcohol lower her defenses, why she didn't consider how her actions could be misread. Eventually, Tamar reached out, sending a text to Yandy that was long, emotional, and laced with guilt. But Yandy didn't respond, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know how to process betrayal from both sides at once. So Tamar decided to confront Mendeecees instead, calling him with panic in her voice, demanding clarity, asking if she had put him in a worse position than she realized. The conversation between Tamar and Mendeecees was filled with overlapping sentences, apologies, frustration, and long silences where neither of them knew how to speak without making things worse. Tamar insisted she didn't mean anything disrespectful, saying she was drunk, overwhelmed, and not thinking straight, while Mendeecees admitted that he should have stepped back even before she reached out to him. He told her he didn't want her painted as the villain, but Tamar wasn't convinced. The internet had already chosen its narrative, and she felt the pressure crushing her from every angle. But the most explosive moment of all happened when the three of them finally came face to face in the same room. The silence between them was suffocating, filled with anger, confusion, and heartbreak. Yandy didn't look at Tamar at first. She kept her eyes on the floor, fighting tears, while Tamar stood across from her, her own eyes red, her voice soft as she whispered, "I'm so sorry," a sentence that made Yandy flinch as if the words were too sharp to touch. Mendeecees tried to mediate, saying he wanted them to talk, but both women cut him off, Yandy with a quiet, "Let me speak," and Tamar with a guilty, "Please let me explain." When Yandy finally looked up, her voice cracked as she asked the one question Tamar feared the most, "Why didn't you respect my boundaries?" Tamar broke down, covering her face with her hands, admitting she never meant to cross a line, that she trusted Mendeecees too much, that she misread the level of comfort, that the alcohol clouded her judgment, tanned for a moment. Yandy felt her anger shift into something softer but no less painful. Yandy then turned to Mendeecees, asking him why he didn't stop it sooner, why he allowed the moment to grow into something that looked like betrayal. He had no good answer, only regret. The confrontation lasted hours, filled with emotional confessions, apologies, and moments where all three of them fell silent, realizing how fragile their relationships had become. By the end, nothing was fully resolved, but everything was painfully real. And the emotional breakdowns left them drained, uncertain, and forced to confront the truth they had avoided for too long. The damage from that drunken night wouldn't disappear easily. And even with apologies, healing would take time none of them were sure they had. As the dust begins to settle on that unforgettable night, the story is far from over. Fans are still debating, theories are still swirling, and the consequences for Mendeecees, Tamar, and Yandy continue to unfold. Every glance, every word, every social media post is now under intense scrutiny, and the questions remain. Can trust be rebuilt? Will forgiveness come? Or has the damage already gone too far? One thing is certain: what started as a single drunken night has ignited a whirlwind of emotions, secrets, and revelations that no one can ignore. And now, it's your turn to weigh in. What would you do if you were in Yandy's shoes? Could you forgive? Or would the betrayal be too much to overcome? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and join the conversation as we continue to follow every shocking twist and revelation. Don't miss a single updates. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay on top of the drama as it unfolds. This story is evolving fast, and every new development is more shocking than the last. Stay tuned, because in the world of reality TV, the next twist is always just around the corner. Always just around the corner.